Sorry about that. On the first part, I wasn't supposed to be live streaming. I was just doing my private uni notes, and turns out to be very popular. For a channel of 300, it had 51 viewers, and I was like, wow, it's never happened before. So, massive milestone. Wasn't supposed to happen. Anyway, who am I? With others. Personal identity is not constructed in a vacuum. Becoming you involves feedback from and interaction with others. No study to date has found heritability even close to 100% on any psychological trait, let alone something as multifaceted and dynamic as identity. That leaves plenty of room for peers, family, and culture to play a significant role in shaping who we are. As adolescents talk about their lives, who they are, and what they want to become, how others respond to those conversations can be influential in strengthening, adjusting, or abandoning their developing identity. For example, a supportive network of family and friends can act as a safe space for adolescents to explore who they want to be. And adolescents who have emotionally sensitive and responsive parents tend to explore a wider range of possible identities. Pittman et al. 2012. One way in which we all make sense of who we are is by integrating our past, present, and future selves into a personal narrative, i.e., autobiographical memory. By adolescence, there is more personal history to talk about, and young adults are increasingly aware of their distinctiveness and uniqueness from others. Adolescents who have friends who listen more, actively and encourage them to connect events in their lives into a personal, meaningful story, tend to have a more secure sense of who they are. Ragaline, 2016. This creates a positive feedback loop, as adolescents who develop a clearer sense of identity are better able to engage in helpful interactions with others and are less likely to abandon their own beliefs. Writer et al. 2019. Swan et al. 2000. An important part of creating a personal identity for adolescents is gaining greater control over their own lives. But the shift towards more reciprocal relationships, autonomy, and an equitable balance of power can be a tricky one to negotiate, particularly for parents and friends. Branch et al. 2012. With greater independence comes greater equality in decision making, and more say in how they spend their time and money. The term teenager itself only emerged in the early 20th century as children began to spend a greater portion of their time together at school, allowing them to develop their own culture away from the watchful eye of the family. Access to technology such as the car and later the mobile phones gave them even greater independence, and advertisers reinforced the term when they realised teenagers represented a group with enough disposable income to target. With greater personal autonomy comes more time spent with peers, offering adolescents opportunities to polish their social skills, develop friendships, manage conflict, and work on their identities. The amount of unsupervised time teens have with their peers varies considerably between societies. For example, American high school students reported spending 23.1 hours per week with friends or going on dates, compared with 9.7 and 13.5 per week respectively, for students in Taiwan and Japan, Larson and Burma, 1999. These differences in adolescents' behaviour may well be capturing the differences in cultural values. We have met before, namely adolescents with individualistic cultures such as European Americans. Ones might be quicker to adopt independence regarding how they spend their time, as doing so maps out the values of autonomy and personal choice. By contrast, adolescents from collectivist cultures, such as those of many Asia, Africa, and South America, will be relatively slower to adopt these markers of independence, because doing so runs against valuing obligations to others. Key point: social interactions with friends and family shapes adolescents' identity by supporting identity exploration, fostering a sense of personal autonomy, and highlighting uniqueness from others. The Parenting Across Cultures project is a longitudinal study of parenting and child development in 9 countries: China, Colombia, Italy, Jordan, Kenya, the Philippines, Sweden, Thailand, and the USA. Children were recruited at around 8 years old, and family members were interviewed every year for 12 years about parent-child relationships, cultural norms and children behavioural, emotional, social, academic adjustment. One interesting outcome was that adolescents' interpretations of their parents' behaviour predicted how their behaviour affected adolescents. If adolescents perceived their parents' expectations about family obligations were in line with other parents' behaviour in their community, then adolescents were more likely to be socially well adjusted and to regard their parents' behaviour as legitimate and justified. If the parents' behaviour was outlier to cultural norms, adolescents were more likely to regard their parents as acting out of hostility or neglect. So it's not just what parents do that affects adolescents, but how adolescents perceive what their parents do in relation to everyone else's parents. Langford et al. 2018. Who does society want me to be? As we have seen in previous sections, our identity is constructed through an ongoing conversation between ourselves and others. In that space between self and others, it is inevitable that cultural values come to the affect adolescents' emerging identities. The language we speak, the community we belong to, and the value we uphold become parts of who we are. Nowhere is where this is the influence better demonstrated than when looking at the diversity of the coming of age ceremonies and rites of passage, which have been documented in some form or other in half of the world's societies. Box 12.1 and figure 12.2, Schlegel and Barry, 1980. Box 12.1, coming of age. Jewish communities around the world celebrate bar mitzvah when boys 13 years of old and mitzvah when girls are 12 years old. Weeks of preparation and practice lead to a ceremony in front of family, friends, and broader community, involving observing the commandments of the Torah, following the large celebration. After the mitzvah, children are responsible for their actions according to Jewish law and can participate in all the same aspects of Jewish community life as adults. Fathers offer thanks to God that they are no longer punishable for their children's sins. 13 years old boys from indigenous Santerre Maui tribe in Brazil and Amazon wear mitts covered on the inside with bullet ants, so called because their bites cause pain comparable to being shot. The ant's venom typically causes the boy's hands and parts of his arms to become temporarily paralyzed, and he may shake uncontrollably for days. If the boys can wear the mitts for 10 minutes or so, on many occasions over several months, they emerge as adults, can now marry, have a say in the community, and take on leadership roles. Girls from the same tribe go through a different ritual after their first menstruation. This involves being left alone in a hut for a month, only occasionally seeing their mothers, who bring them food. They also emerge from the ceremony with adult status, ready to marry. In the Bashada tribe in Ethiopia, Omo Valley, young boys known as Ukuli take part in a multi-day coming-of-age ceremony that includes dancing, singing and whipping. This climaxes when the young men attempt to leap up onto and run on several deep row of cattle repeatedly. I thought that was the Mazas tribe, actually. Without failing, if they are successful, they become respected Maza men. Oh, it is the Maza tribe, who have had passed the bull jumping ceremony, who temporarily live apart from the rest of the tribe. Being Maza essentially qualifies men for marriage, raising children and owning cattle. Note that the transition is only very loosely associated with age, so that a 16-year-old and a 26-year-old could become adults at the same time if they are successfully completed the ritual. And women are whipped, leaving scarring on their backs. And that's the female ritual. I noticed they left that out. Left to right, top to bottom, bar and bar mitzvah Israel, Sacha Maui Tukonzera International Brazil, Bashida cow jumping Ethiopia, Sweet 16 USA, Seijin No High Japan, Quince Ferdo Mexico sauce. Sweet 16 birthday parties in the USA and Canada range from small-scale parties at home with close family to more lavish celebrations with friends, hired DJs, makeup, hairstyling, experienced gowns and dresses, and hotel ballrooms. For young Americans, 16 is especially important as it marks the age when they are legally permitted to drive a car with the personal independence that this allows. In Japan, the second Monday of January is an annual public holiday that marks Seijin no High, or Coming of Age Day. Turning 20 is a significant milestone in Japanese culture, and both men and women celebrate the occasion by attending ceremonies at local civic venues. Traditional dress, where they listen to official speeches and receive gifts, followed by partying with family and friends. After Seijin no High, the Japanese recognize the youth as mature citizens able to vote and drink alcohol, but they also expect them to contribute to society and assume more adult-like responsibilities. Quinceañera, literally 15-year-old, is celebrated across Mexico and other Spanish-speaking parts of the world. It usually involves a Catholic mass followed by a fiesta involving coordinated dancing, toasts and cutting of cake. The ceremony was originally a sign of young women's eligibility for marriage, similar to the upper-class debutante balls of Europe. It marks the transition into adulthood it may include the quinceanera giving a doll to a younger sister, symbolically showing that the celebrate is giving up her childhood. After the ceremony, quinceaneras can enjoy adult privileges, but also vow to honour the traditions and values of family and community. Key point: rituals that mark the passage into adulthood, rites of passage, and coming of age ceremonies are common features of many societies. Coming of age ceremonies often require conspicuous amounts of time, effort, and resources, not to mention pain for some of those taking part. Apart from dressing up and having a good time, why do people do all the trouble? Despite big differences in how these ceremonies appear on the surface, they share some deeper similarities that suggest a common purpose. Most rites of passage, including adolescent initiations, involve a public expression of values important to the society or what the people consider significant. These communal declarations help to reinforce the social capital of everyone involved. That is, the network of relationships, values, and resources that allow individuals in a group to work together towards a common purpose. Effective functioning of this network is essential if the knowledge, customs, and traditions of one generation are going to be passed on to the next and not be subject to the whims of an individual. Van Gennep, 1960. By investing in social capital, everyone stands to benefit from the returned shared resources, e.g. food, clothes, know-how, childcare and protection, synchronized chants, dancing, music, and generally losing yourself in a crowd. Common elements of many rituals and religions also help create a common purpose, identity, and high mentality. Here to tell, 2008. But what does the adolescent get out of it, especially if they walk around wearing gloves of stinging ants for days on end? The performance aspect of coming of age ceremonies communities a lot of information to everyone else presents. Adolescents take centre stage to advertise that they have internalized and respect the beliefs, know-how and traditions of their society through speeches, rehearsed dances and retelling of sister stories. Well, it's obviously that they're building up a immune to the stings of the ants through generations and or the ratcheting effect. Their fertility, growth, practical strength and endurance are also placed in the spotlight, all of which undergo significant changes in an adolescence, advertising that they have a physical maturity needed for adulthood, for example, raising children or communal labour. These hard to fake signs suggest why it's not enough just to get together, have a party and declare you are an adult now. Together, these behavioural and physical displays announce to others that adolescents are ready to take their place in society and to enjoy some of the benefits of adulthood. However, many of the coming of age ceremonies make it very clear that the adult privileges come new obligations, effectively saying something like, yes, you can now have sex, marry, drink and vote, but you must also take care of others, put food on the table, protect the family, tend to the resources, uphold the values of the community, and take personal responsibility for your actions. Many cultural groups have deeply embedded ideas about honour, respect, gratitude, and loyalty to the family. For example, the concept of familialism in Latin American countries, Haya and Untang na Lub in the Philippines, and Omoluwabu in the Yoruba people of Nigeria. Across a wide range of cultures, three of the top defining features of adulthood are 1. accepting responsibility for the consequences of one's actions. 2. Deciding the personal beliefs and values independently of parents and other influences. And 3. Being financially independent from parents. Arnett and Schwab, 2012. Key point. Across cultures, key indicators of adulthood are taking personal responsibility for your actions and independence from others.